Hello, welcome to pro tip number 63, where today I'll be covering the uBlock Origin Lite switch. Now, if you're not aware of what uBlock Origin is, uBlock Origin is one of the most popular ad blocking extensions for Chromium-based browsers. And there's been some changes. There has been some ongoing changes for a while on it. But specifically now, this month, the original uBlock Origin extension will be disabled by default. There are some ways to get around it, but basically, since Google started last year to, come out with their new kind of like what they call Manifest v3, which determines kind of what, I guess, extensions are able to do in regards to actually performing actions within the browser, etc. I'm not entirely sure how it works, but anyway, they have a new Manifest v3, which decides on what kind of actions an extension can do. The original uBlock Origin relies on the older Manifest v2. And basically, the main thing is that v2 had much more options into what it allowed an extension to do versus v3. Obviously, this is kind of guided by Google's shift towards, I guess, being more ad-friendly. And they want to remove some of the functionality that the previous ad blocker had in order to, make life better for their advertisers, I guess. So what that means is the original uBlock Origin will go away at some point. Actually, it will go away in June of 2025. The newer extension, the new version that they brought out to adhere to this new Manifest version, is called uBlock Origin Lite. And that is the one that you'll need to switch to. Most likely, if you're watching this, you already know what uBlock Origin is. You already know hopefully you have some idea what the problem is. But basically it means that if you're using uBlock Origin, you will have to switch to uBlock Origin Lite as long as you're using Chrome or Edge or I'm assuming any other Chromium-based browser. Now, one alternative is to switch to Firefox, but I know that for a lot of people and a lot of organizations, that's not really realistic to enforce that. So the easier option might just be to switch to uBlock Origin Lite. Now, the goal of this pro tip is to help you with that process, to help you keep an eye on which devices are already swapped over, which ones are not, and more. Now, before I start, it is linked somewhere halfway down my blog, but I did do a previous pro tip. It was number 33 about managing Chrome extensions. That shows you how you can scan which extensions are currently installed for a specific user. So if you're interested in that, I would recommend you go to that after watching this. This will be all about how to scan the configuration for uBlock Origin and uBlock Origin Lite to ensure that you are swapping to uBlock Origin Lite. And the details will become clear as I go through it. Now, to start off, I'm not going to cover the deployment a lot, or at least not in detail. Obviously, you deploy however you want. The way that we will be managing, or the way that I'll be managing it in this pro tip, is all through registry keys. There are a couple of registry keys that you can use in order to control what extensions are being installed or not allowed, and what the policy is with those extensions, like what kind of settings they have, for example. And I'll be covering those, and we'll be scanning those, and then we'll be taking a look at some reports to manage those better, or to see what the results are and which devices adhere and do not adhere. Now, to start off, I'm going to go through some of the registry keys. So I'm going to jump here on my VM, registry keys. For both Google and Edge, these are very similar, or actually pretty much similar. The main difference will be the identifier. So each application extension will have their own ID. If you go to the Chrome store or the Microsoft extension store, or whatever it's called, you can go to a specific extension, and in the URL here, you will see the ID of that extension. You will need that for obviously both the original and the Lite extension. I also have them linked in my blog if you want to take them from there, but if you want to be sure and find them yourselves because you might not trust me, then you can find it this way. Now, when it comes to the registry keys, we are going to use a few. We are going to use the block list to obviously block an extension from being installed or used. We are using the force list to force the installation of the new extension that we want, the Lite version. And then third-party extensions, the ID of the Origin Lite extension. And then policy, that's the key where we will be forcing some certain policies. And now there's two that I've seen in basically the Reddit thread that this was inspired by. The first one that everyone will probably want to use is disable first run page. This disables the page that pops up when the extension is installed so that your users don't become confused when all of a sudden they open their browser, a new tab shows up with like some settings of uBlock Origin Lite and they don't know what to do. Or they start, sending you tickets because they're like, well, I'm being hacked or whatever they might think. Now, the second one, this is an optional one. I will not be using this one in any of the reports or anything like that, but I just wanted to also showcase it because I do think it will be useful for a lot of you, is the no filtering one. The no filtering will allow you to give or select, show, add, whatever it might be, domains that you want to be exempt from the ad blocker. So this will be useful for example, if you're using a lot of web-based applications, for example, Office, if you use like a web version of Outlook or whatever it might be useful to whitelist basically that domain so that it doesn't get blocked by, or the ad blocker does not block elements on that specific domain, which might prevent certain functionality from working. So those are the ones that we will be using. Again, you can deploy this however you like, whatever your preferred method is, but we will be using these ones. For Edge, it will be almost identical. Instead of just policies Google Chrome, it will be policies Microsoft Edge. And then again, the install block list, the install force list, and the third party and the policy and all that, it will be the same. Again, the only difference here will be the identifier. So here, kind of the identifier that's being shown and that I showed earlier. All of this information, all these registry keys, values, etc., are in the blog. One additional thing to keep an eye out on is for the block and force list. The names of the values will always be just a number. So you can add multiple in here. You might already have some in here. Later down the line, when we go into the scanning configuration, you will have to keep this in mind when you set up the scanning configuration. So talking about scanning configuration, let's head into that. Now you might see, you'll see I have a lot of registry keys because I've done like a lot of custom stuff like this that requires scanning registry keys. Now, if I just go to the bottom, I do have as I mentioned just a second ago, if you have multiple, what you can do is you can just add the configuration for scanning the registry key. So obviously the path and the value name. If you have multiple and you don't know exactly which one is uBlock Origin and which one is uBlock Origin Lite, you can also just add all the numbers that you have. So if you have three blocked, for example, you can add block list 1, block list 2, block list 3. You can do the same thing for force list. It won't have that much impact on your scanning anyway, like in regards to performance or anything like that. It's not a huge draw. So if you do have 5 or 10 of them, you could just add all of them, and it might make it, you might have some use for them later on if you want to see I want to report on all the ones, which devices is this blocked on and that blocked on. So there are quick links here for a report on that specific key and value, in case you want to use that. The other ones, as I mentioned, these are all the same, basically pass and value names. So it's all you need to enter. So here we have the policy one for Chrome, for the disable first run page, for the no filtering, for the force list for Chrome, the force list for Edge, the block list for Edge, the first run page for Edge, and the no filtering for Edge. So just got to make sure that you enter all those registry keys here in the registry key scanning. Once you have done that, we can get to the reporting and dashboarding. I'll start with the dashboarding because that nicely shows everything in one place. So I basically have two reports, one for Chrome, one for Edge. They are, by default, they are only showing devices that do not apply or do not adhere to the compliance that I've set up. Now, what is the compliance that I have set up? First criteria, it must be a Windows client operating system. I'm assuming that will be your first priority, making sure that the users have their ad blockers. Servers will most likely have, I don't know if you put ad blockers on your browsers on your servers or not, but that's less likely to happen. Second is uBlock Origin Lite is forced. So with that force registry key. Third, uBlock Origin, the original one, is blocked. Number 4 is uBlock Origin, the original is not forced. I think that if you have the original uBlock Origin forced and blocked at the same time, I'm hoping that block still takes precedence. However, I didn't test it, so just to be safe, this is just the way that I've configured it. And then number 5, the last condition is uBlock Origin Lite is configured without a first run page, so that disable first run page is basically enabled. With that being said, then so it will only show, the default report will only show the ones that do not adhere to that list of requirements. Again, the list of requirements and all the other stuff you'll find on the blog. Then we have here, I've added those to a alert report widget. So this will show you just the number of devices that do not adhere to that specific policy. And then next is I have removed the only showing the ones that do not adhere to the policy condition. And I'll show you that in a second. To just have a general report that shows me all of the devices, whether they adhere to the policy or not. I'll show you both. That way, if I, for example, want to quickly have okay, which ones do actually, where is the setup complete of the things that I just mentioned? Oh, okay, this one, it is complete. And then I can look into the details as well. And then last but not least, for on-prem, I also linked at the very bottom of the blog, I linked 2 chart reports. So you can have an alternative way of seeing okay, how far percentage-wise am I? In this case, like this one, if I scroll just right, there's one. Yes, there's one where I completed it and all the rest are not compliant. So talking about how do we adjust this? I've made the reports in a way that it is easier to configure and to adjust this. So that way it'll make it easier for you to use it in different scenarios, whether you want to use it as a general report where you just filter with the columns, or whether you want to use it in a dashboard to just show the no's or the yeses. So let's edit the report. So here in the report editor, as you'll be used to if you're familiar with Lansweeper on-prem, you'll paste in the code, and all you need to do to change it is scroll all the way to the bottom. And then here, I've made the report in a way so that it's easy to adjust. Here, where it says the where clause at the very bottom, setup complete equals no. If you want to only show the yeses, you swap that to yes. If you want to see both no and yes, you just remove the line. That's it. It's that simple to do the basic adjustments to this report. As always, all these reports that I provide I see them as templates. You can use them as they are. But if you want to change specific things, if you want different criteria, if you don't care whether the first run page is configured or not, you can adjust this to however you like. But if you want to just change whether you see yes, no, or both, this is how you do it. You just remove that line or you change it to yes or no. Default will be no. So that is clear. I think that is it for the on-prem. So I've shown all of that. Now let's swap to cloud. So lower this, throw this up, and there we go. Now, on-prem is great if you're using that, if you're used to that, if you prefer using that, if you only have one installation, all great. In my case, I do have multiple installations that are being pushed into one cloud site, so I'd like to have one view of it. This is where we get into clouds. I get both my installations in the one instance, in the one site. And I have similar reports here. So I have one for Chrome, I have one for Edge. You can put them in the number widgets. You can put them in the report overview with other reports if you'd like to. You can, similar to how I did on-prem, you can just embed the entire report and then sort on different columns to see like, okay, which ones are yes and which ones are no. That's all the same. There is a slight difference in the report itself. Simply because the reporting is slightly different and I had to do some different things. But if we head over to the actual report here, you'll see as well that so it shows similar-ish information in the beginning, basic information of your asset. Then it will also show you whether the setup is complete or not. And then we have our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different conditions. So the original uBlock is not forced to be installed, is the first one. Then the original is blocked. The first run page is the registry key exists and is set up. The register, or like that value of the first run page, is set to disable. And then we want to have Lite. The actual uBlock Origin Lite is forced to be installed. I think, and those are all the conditions that we need. And then we can do a similar thing here with it. And right now, similar to the first one, similar to the one that I just mentioned, default is it is set to no. So it only shows the one that do not add here. I think if I... Chrome, I don't know if I have Chrome that has like a somewhat half a setup. I don't think I do, no. In your case, if you go to this report and you want to adjust this no to something else, you won't be able to edit because it's like a built-in report. You will have to duplicate first. So duplicate the report. This will give you a copy of it. You can name that whatever you want, obviously. I think it will prompt you to give it a different name. You can scroll all the way to the bottom, and this is where it says setup complete equal to no. You can swap this to yes. You can delete this step altogether if you want, and that way make it for yes and no. So again, similar to the on-prem report, I've made it in a way that it's very easy to configure, to change, so that you can easily basically adjust it to whatever your needs might be. And if I here go to the Edge report, so at the top now we have one where the setup is not complete because it has the original is not forced to be installed. So uBlock Origin is not forced to be installed. The first run page is set up. It is disabled. Lite is enforced. What is missing here? Original uBlock Origin is not blocked. So that's the condition here that we're missing. So that's a way that you can basically see like, okay, what is missing, what is not missing. If we go back to on-prem, swap this out. Whoop. Again here, similar thing. This is only showing the no's, but let's go to the dashboard. And I have here an example of yes and no. And if I then go to just here, filter on yes, and I can also show it here. So in the on-prem report, you'll see, it'll show you, okay, here's the policy, disable first run page. It is enabled with the 1 indicating that's enabled. The uBlock Origin Lite has been forced. And uBlock Origin has been blocked. So that's the way that you can see it there. Origin, yes, no. I'm sure that if I go here and then do something like this, can I find one? Maybe not. This will be Chrome. So no, I won't have one that's like partially done. But the same will happen here, that if one is not compliant to what the rules that we've set up are, then you can tell here from these different columns, you can see what is not being compliant. Similar to as here, as I can see, like the origin, the original one, uBlock Origin is not blocked. That's why it's not compliant. So that will help you basically identify what is or what might be missing on that device if your deployment didn't go through or something like that, or something happened. So that being said, I think that brings us to the end of this. Hopefully this is useful for you if you are in the same situation where you kind of have to do this swap. As I mentioned in the beginning, with regards to deadlines, it was October last year that Manifest version 2 extensions were being disabled in the stable version of Chrome. Now in this month, February 2025, they will be disabled by default with limited ways to restore them. So you can restore it. Finally, and then in the last deadline is in June 2025, the Manifest version 2 extensions will be permanently removed. So if you know, or if you're implementing the workaround to still enable it, which you can apparently do, then you still have until June to do this. If not, you might want to do this sooner rather than later, because most likely all your users now are using their browser without their adblock, basically. So you might want to start doing this soon, basically. And I hope that these reports, the dashboards and all these things, I hope that it helps in order to kind of keep an eye on what is already done, what is not done, where do you still need to work on, etc. Again, all these reports, they're templates. I know that I've kind of made up my own kind of compliance for it. Maybe you don't want all those rules. Maybe you want to change them slightly. That's why I make these reports and these dashboards, etc. It's I do whatever I feel is best, my gut feeling, basically. But it's up to you to fine tune them and to use them in a way that makes sense for your organization and your environment. So with that, I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.